Hello and welcome back to Bookish and welcome back to Tag Tuesday. I'm returning to make a tag because I was tagged in an original tag by Scott and Nell, and that is the cancel culture tag. Thank you to Scott and Nell for tagging me and giving me an opportunity. What I really hope will be my last opportunity to try to get all of my, completely developed thoughts about cancel culture into one last video, and then hopefully not have to address the topic again. I've been watching a lot of people's videos. I've made, I think, 3 or 4 videos that are completely or in part devoted to this subject, this topic of cancel culture. And so in an effort to be as clear as I could be about what I think about cancel culture, I actually made notes. I don't usually make notes. I have them on a notepad right here in front of me. I usually just kind of talk off the cuff, but I wanted to be really careful and as precise as I could be about this topic of cancel culture. So thanks again to Scott and Nell for tagging me. And so here we go. So prompt number 1 is to tag somebody. I'm going to tag Jason from Old Blues Chapter and Verse. Jason and I are good friends. That doesn't mean we agree on everything. And I think this would be a topic where his thoughts and my thoughts diverge. And so I'd be interested in seeing what he has to say if he's interested in doing the tag. So there's the person that I tagged. And then prompt number 2 is, what is cancel call-out culture? Okay, so let me just, I'm not going to really talk about call-out culture, but what I would say is that I think, just to define the two, or just define the difference, I think calling out is what you do before you cancel. If we want to just, that's just the simplest thing I'm going to say. So when we talk about calling somebody out, I think that's perfectly legitimate. And I hope people do that to me when I make mistakes so that I can correct those mistakes. That is one way in which I learn. So calling somebody out is saying, hey, I think what you said was misgendering, or hey, I think what you said, that your use of this word is problematic, and maybe you need to think about using a different word. I want those things to happen so that I can do better and I can change in ways that are beneficial to me and to everybody else. That's calling out. Canceling then should only happen if somebody has been called out on something legitimate and then they refused to change. Not that they refuse to apologize, not that they refuse to say something, but they actually then continue in that behavior. So that's to me the difference between calling out and canceling. But this term cancel culture really cannot be defined any longer. It has just become one of those terms that is used as a blanket term for all kinds of things. And it covers a whole myriad of sins, and it provides opportunities to all kinds of people for bad behavior. And at the same time, it diminishes and dilutes sincere efforts to call attention to racism and misogyny and bigotry and homophobia and transphobia and sexual assault have gotten lost in all this stuff because of cancel culture. So to me, it has no definable meaning. There are still people in the world who are using this idea of canceling, which I'll get to here in a moment, as a way to draw attention to bad behavior and bad statements made by powerful people. That's still a part of cancel culture, and to me, that's the legitimate part of cancel culture, such as it is. But that term is also used as a scare word, primarily by conservative politicians who want to terrify people into believing that cancel culture will lead to, some kind of real restrictions on freedom of speech, and that the woke, I hate that word now, mob will start coming for your books and all kinds of stuff like that. That's one way in which the term cancel culture is used, and it's used to essentially frighten people into believing this horrible thing is going to happen. Having said that, it is also, and this is one of the things that is clear to me, is that the term cancel culture also provides cover to bullies. That there are people out there in our community, in every community, that just use canceling as a way to exercise power as a bully, and they get off on bullying people. And they use the idea that they're doing something noble by canceling as a way of covering for what really is just bullying. So to make clear then the difference between bullying and canceling, I want to kind of talk about the difference and use that analogy about punching up or punching down. So to me, canceling is punching up and bullying is punching down or laterally. their difference. And canceling was not intended to be a form of bullying. When the idea of canceling came out, it was simply a grassroots way for people who traditionally went unheard, whose issues went unrecognized. It was a way for them to collectively call out powerful, wealthy, influential people for their bad behavior and their bigoted, racist, transphobic, homophobic statements. That's what it was. And I don't know for sure if the people who began trying to cancel people, and I'm just going to use J.K. Rowling as the example because she's the most famous one in the book world. I'm not sure if the people trying to cancel J.K. Rowling, who drew attention to her transphobic statements, I'm not sure if they actually believed they could get her publishing contract canceled, hurt her book sales. I'm not sure if they believe that or not. If so, as a mocking tweet that she posted today, as if perfect timing for me, and I'll put a picture of it over there, a mocking tweet she posted today, if that's what canceling was attempted to do, then it fails. And Mark Nash pointed this out, that since canceling is really punching up, the likelihood of the person you're targeting actually being canceled is almost zero. Unless they can actually be proven to break a law like Harvey Weinstein, then the canceling doesn't work in that way. And we run a risk when we target somebody like J.K. Rowling that by turning this kind of group against Rowling and her work and her statements and trying to get people to boycott buying her books, we risk then some of the people who are more on the edge doing increasingly horrible things, like in that tweet, essentially suggesting she should be pipe bombed, which she then responded to mockingly and saying that canceling obviously hasn't worked, so I guess that your last resort is to try to blow me up. That is, obviously not something we want to be supporting. We don't want to be supporting violence against J.K. Rowling. And I don't believe that's what canceling really attempted to do. So to me, canceling is punching up. Us, me, you, whoever, deciding to speak out against J.K. Rowling and boycott her books and even encourage other people to boycott her books is punching up. It's less likely to be effective, but it is more justified because it is a way of calling attention to bad behavior by powerful people. And to me, that's what canceling is. Doing the same thing laterally or to someone with less power than you, or to someone with an inability to stand up against this whole group of people coming after them for something, that isn't canceling, that's bullying. And bullying should not have gotten mixed up with cancel culture. So here's the thing that I think is important about cancel culture. The only power, or the things important about canceling, the only power that people who want to cancel people like J.K. Rowling have is economic boycott and swaying public opinion. Neither one of those two things is likely to be effective. I was talking to somebody about this just the other day, and canceling is like on a sliding scale. The more power you have, the more I think you should be called out and potentially canceled for bigoted, awful statements. But the less likely you are to be affected by it because the people trying to cancel you don't have power. As we begin to move it down and the people who we are looking at as potentially canceling have less power, we're much more likely to be effective at actually canceling them, but that canceling is less warranted because they don't have as much power. There's a big difference between J.K. Rowling saying something transphobic in terms of the reach and the impact that has, and some booktuber with 900 followers or 100 followers or hell, 15,000 subscribers saying something problematic. There is a difference, and our response should be different, and we should be very careful not to step over the line into bullying, which is a difficult thing to do, but something we need to be very aware of. By the way, while I'm on this topic, canceling actually requires power. To actually cancel an idea from circulating, you have to have power, and the people in the cancel mob don't actually have that power. The people actually have that power are government officials. If you want to see canceling, look at the fact that a high school teacher lost his job because he assigned a reading from Ta-Nehisi Coates' book. Look at the fact that Texas legislature is moving to remove required curriculum elements about teaching about racism and the civil rights movement from teaching history in the United States. That's actual canceling. That's what we should be afraid of. because that is actually happening, and that can actually take place because the people trying to do that actually have power. This power dynamic is the really, to me, important thing to keep in mind about canceling. And that has gotten lost, I think, in what is now just a mess that we refer to as cancel culture. Problem number 3, is cancel culture a positive or a negative force within BookTube, bookstagram, bookish community as a whole? Why do you think this? Okay, so again, if we're punching up, I think it can be positive. Positive in the sense it's going to, actually cause J.K. Rowling to lose her publishing contract? No. Positive in the sense that we draw more attention to transphobia and what it is and what trans people in the world have had to go through? Yes, that's positive. We may not be doing any damage to J.K. Rowling at all, but I guarantee you the point about transphobia and education about transphobia has grown and has improved because of the canceling of J.K. Rowling. And to me, that's a positive thing. And we here in the BookTube community can do that if we choose to do that. But we have to make sure we're punching up, that we're punching up at an author whose message can reach more people because of their power. We're punching up at a publisher, multi-million-dollar corporations, whose actions do have a real effect, and not that we're not punching sideways or down at people whose opinions we may not like and whose statements may in fact be bigoted and horrible, but they are not in a position to actually do much damage because their reach is so small. Those are the people we should be calling out. That's where the call out should come in. Call those people out, say, I think this was a bigoted statement, to draw attention to it, see if they change. If they don't change, then what I would do in that situation is I just wouldn't watch any more of their videos. I wouldn't follow their channel. If I were a subscriber, I would unsubscribe. I wouldn't say anything about that publicly on my channel. I wouldn't make a video about them and naming them by name on my channel because I think that could potentially have this kind of bullying effect. Now, having said that, and to make sure that any kind of charges of hypocrisy come out, I have done exactly that thing in the past. In the past, I won't go into the details. In the past, I made a video in support of another booktuber who made a video about another booktuber. This is confusing. And I was supporting his position, and I was supporting the booktubers who were essentially on his side. So what happened was that there was some, I'm just going to call it harassing behavior, alleged, and there was some proof of by one booktuber directed to some other booktubers. There was a minor controversy here in our area of booktube, and another booktuber and I made videos addressing this. And in my video, I basically said, I can't support this booktuber anymore until they change, until they, prove to me that they are not going to do this anymore, that they have seen that what they were doing was wrong. And that's the video that I made. By the way, it's gone now. You can't see it anymore. But that's the video I made. And I have to be honest with you, while I feel like I stood up for the right side, and I am, happy to have done so, I do question if that was the right thing to do or not. Now, the booktuber who was, the target of my video, I guess, and the person who we here, or a lot of us here on BookTube, believe was behaving wrongly, their channel still exists. They're still about as successful as they were, so no actual harm was done in terms of that. But I have done that, and I did it because I felt like I was standing up for other booktubers. But you can call that hypocrisy if you want to. That's fine. Like I said, I still have questions about it. But there have been a number of occasions where people with booktube channels have come into my comment section and have attacked me, and it has been tempting to make videos about them, but I don't. And I don't talk about these things publicly except in this video right here because for me, I don't have a motivation to draw attention to what I'm doing, and I don't want anything I'm doing to come off as bullying or as directing bullying behavior at another booktuber. So it can be incredibly negative if we're punching laterally or if we're punching down. If we're punching up to draw attention to social issues, then I think it's positive. Prompt 4, from mixing fabrics to involuntary cannibalism, what transgressions would you boycott an author over? And like Roz said in her video, I don't boycott authors who are dead, who have been dead for a long period of time. In part because if we were to boycott every author who published, or if we were to boycott authors in the past who used problematic language and were bigoted and things like that, we couldn't read books that were published before, I don't know, 1995. And so I don't boycott those authors necessarily. So living authors, I would boycott if I knew or had evidence that the person was guilty of sexual assault, sexual harassment, if they were a misogynist, if they were a bigot, a transphobe, a homophobe, a racist, and I'm sure I'm leaving some out. If I knew those things to be true for a fact, then I would just choose to personally boycott them. I wouldn't buy their books. Now, for me, I wouldn't also go on my channel and say I'm boycotting these people's books, and I wouldn't publicly encourage people to do that. If someone, boxed me or sent me a text or something and said, hey, what do you think of this author? I would certainly share what I knew with a friend of mine in that way, but I choose not to do that publicly. That's me. I don't have a problem with people who do choose to do it publicly because we, have most booktubers live in parts of the world where free speech and free expression is one of those things that guaranteed, one of those freedoms we have. And, just as, I accept that J.K. Rowling has the freedom to express transphobic opinions, I accept that people have the freedom to call her out publicly and to encourage other people to call her out publicly and to organize efforts to call her out publicly because that's free speech. And I accept that people who feel like the people who are calling J.K. Rowling out are engaged in some kind of, left-wing censorship. They have the right to say that too because freedom of expression is messy. Democracy is messy. There are very few definitive lines between what we should do with our freedom and what we shouldn't do with our freedom. But it's no more legitimate to say, if you're upset that people are trying to censor J.K. Rowling's thoughts, and your reaction is to say that people shouldn't be able to say things that censor J.K. Rowling's thoughts, then you're doing the exact same thing they're doing. You are trying to shut down their expression of their ideas, which you have the right to do. And we all have the right to do those things. And so however you choose to pursue this, in terms of freedom of expression, then I think that's fair as long as your expression doesn't violate laws or lead to unsafe conditions or advocate violence, things like that. So yeah, that's my number 4. Number 5, what does boycott mean to you? Not buy, not read, not promote, all 3. How do you boycott? Does this depend on the transgression or the offense? Yes, 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 and yes, and yes. So I boycott by not buying, by not reading, by not promoting. I don't usually make that. I don't make that public because that's what I choose to do with my freedom of expression, is in this case not to use it. I would share those thoughts with people privately. Also, one of the things I want to point out is that in this boycotting and calling out, we have to give room for people to change. We have to accept apologies. We have to give benefit of the doubt to see if people are actually going to change their behavior. If they're called out, we have to give them a chance to reform before we then continue, I think, to the next step of canceling. And again, here I'm talking about people at the top level because I'm talking about canceling. But I also just think, having a capacity for forgiveness and compassion for people who are still working and changing their ideas and trying to overcome these things is still really important. Prompt number 6. What book, authors, if any, would you, have you, otherwise do you boycott? Like Roz, whose channel Scally Dancing about the books, when she did this video with her son Alf, she mentioned Colin McCann's novel, which came out in 2020. There were charges of, I believe, sexual harassment, sexual coercion against Colin McCann, and because when I heard that, I chose not to buy and read that book. That would be one example. I have no idea how things have worked out because, just like Roz said in her video, there are lots of books that I moved on relatively quickly from my desire to buy that book. And if when the next McCann book comes out, I will try to revisit the issue and see what's happened and what we know and make a decision about that, and to see if he's made public statement about these things, and if there's been some kind of remediation, some kind of way in which the situation has been fixed. I also choose not to read H.P. Lovecraft. Now, I know he's a dead author, and I said I don't boycott dead authors. I choose not to read H.P. Lovecraft for a number of reasons. Number one, I find his racism, his ideas about race, incredibly vile. Two, he writes in genres that I don't normally read, so it's easy for me to avoid him, you know. And three, I believe if I were to pick up an H.P. Lovecraft book or story at this time, I would be examining so minutely for evidence of racism and his horrible ideas that I don't think I would be able to be fair to the book as a reader or as a reviewer. So for that reason, H.P. Lovecraft is an example of an author who I guess I kind of intentionally avoid. Prompt 7, when does boycotting a book or an author become cancel culture? Are the two related? Again, it's all the direction in which we're throwing the punch. Are we punching up? Are we punching laterally? Are we punching down? It's only canceling if you're punching up. If you're punching laterally or down, it's more likely to be bullying. There is, you know, a gray area there somewhere, but that's the way but that's the way these things are. There's never going to be somebody who says this is what you can do and this is what you can't do. And if there was, we would all protest against it. So we just have to kind of work those things out on an individual level. For me, it's punching up versus punching laterally or down. Prompt 8, how do you think power, money, size, audience influence, etc. affect who is canceling and being canceled? Again, by my definition of canceling, it is people who traditionally have their voices go unheard and are traditionally the targets of racism, misogyny, bigotry, homophobia, transphobia, etc. People who have traditionally been overlooked and been silenced. Their speaking out against the powerful is always okay, whether it has any effect or not. I watched Mark Nash's version of the video, and he's right. You know, and the J.K. Rowling tweet proves it, that you know, we are unlikely to ever cancel these people who are powerful, but we can call attention to the issue. We can then create more education on the issue, and to me, that's positive. So as long as, again, we're punching up, then I don't have a problem with it. Prompt 9, can a small booktuber cancel a best-selling author? What about a large booktuber and a tiny author? A small booktuber cannot actually cancel the work of a powerful author. A small booktuber can add their voice to those who are trying to call attention to the bad statements, bad opinions, bad actions of a powerful author. And no, a large booktuber cannot cancel a small author or a tiny author, because that's not canceling, that's bullying. A tiny author against a large booktuber is not canceling. A large booktuber who goes after a tiny author is not canceling. They're not doing something noble. They are bullying, because they are directing a disproportionate amount of force at someone whose relative power is so small that their message is essentially not going to reach enough people to cause harm. And the harm they're causing, in my opinion, is greater than the harm being caused. And there's too much potential for just straight up bullying in that situation. So no, they can't cancel, but they can bully. Let's see, prompt 9. Do you apply the same standards to booktubers you watch? Have you ever called out, confronted, privately messaged, or unsubscribed from somebody over their opinion? Yes. I mentioned publicly calling out a booktuber in that situation where I said I wasn't still completely comfortable with what I've done, but I still think it was the right thing to do. I have confronted people privately about some of the things they've posted, or some of the things they've said. Sorry, some of the videos they've posted, some of the things they've said in their videos, and messaged them privately. And I have unsubscribed from a couple of channels who it just appeared to me that their videos expressed opinions which I just wasn't interested in hearing, and I just unsubscribed. Did I ceremoniously unsubscribe? No. By the way, I've also encouraged people to unsubscribe from my channel and to stop watching my videos. If you find that my opinions are so offensive that you have to say something hateful in my comment section, probably just skip my videos and go on and watch somebody else who you agree with. That's fine with me, because I do the exact same thing. Okay, so prompt 10, if cancel culture is a destructive force, a constructive force might be to highlight talented authors and excellent books from communities victimized by anybody you boycott. Please highlight some authors and recommend some books. So, given that real canceling can only take place with people who have power, and that government officials are the people who have power, and those people are actually moving to cancel things like the 1619 Project, and to cancel a whole field of study which doesn't take place in public schools called critical race theory, I thought I would choose some books by people who have either been victims of real government canceling or efforts to cancel, or allegedly, or people believe they are. So, We Want Freedom, Alive from the Black Panther Party by Bumia Abu-Jamal. Jamal is still on death row in Pennsylvania. He was convicted of killing a police officer. Several appeals have been filed. There are a number of things about the way that case was worked out, which many people believe indicate that Jamal is not actually guilty of the crime. I'll also point out Solitary, which I read as a part of the BookTube Prize last year. This is about Albert Woodfox, a man who was essentially kept in solitary confinement, in prison for decades, and beaten and mistreated for a crime that he did not commit. Angela Y. Davis, who was also at one point prosecuted by the government for an involvement, or an alleged involvement with a murder, which she was found not guilty of. Her book, Our Prison's Obsolete, kind of about a way in which how ineffective our prison system is, and how inherently troubled by racism our prison system is. White Rage, my favorite book from last year, about this situation of institutional racism by Dr. Carol Anderson. I haven't seen this book specifically targeted, but I have seen white people mock what white rage is. If you don't know what white rage is, go back and view some of the video footage of the January 6th attack on the United States Capitol. Even Rex Kendi's book, How to Be an Anti-Racist, I have seen him in this book and his other books specifically targeted by those in power who want to prevent his book from being used in classrooms, and who target him specifically. And then I also just wanted to mention another group that's been targeted, and that would be Indigenous people, First Nations people, and this excellent book, Our History is the Future, by Nick Estes. Mention that. Yeah, okay. I think that will be it for today. By the way, thanks to Brianna for many of the book recommendations that I just held up to you. Brianna, I don't think, has made a video in a long time. They are sorely missed, and I really love their videos. So anyway, there you go. There's my answers to the what is it called? The cancel tag, the cancel culture tag. Thanks again to Scott and Nell. I'll leave a link to their video down below, as well as to Roz and to Mark Nash's video over the same subject. Anyway, look forward to your comments in the comment section below, and as always, thank you for watching.